are going to finish up the function of the nephron by looking at the distal convoluted tubule and what goes on in the collecting duct. All right? And part of that, then we're going to come back and look at proximal convoluted tubule and distal tubule for acid-base balance after we've kind of introduced the concept of acid-base balance and buffers. But as a summary, a little bit of review here. The first part of a nephron is the capsule, Bowman's capsule or glomerular capsule. And what occurs there? Filtration. All right, so separation by size. And what do we not find in the filtrate because it's too large? So no proteins. And because they're even larger than proteins, no cells, okay? Unless our filtration membrane is damaged. And then we would see filtration was better, we would see proteins in the filtrator in the urine. All right, then we have the proximal convoluted tubule. And what did we talk about that occurred there last Thursday? Reabsorption. And what were the mechanisms that we used for reabsorption? Okay, secondary active transport. And that occurred at the luminal surface or the microvilli. And then what occurred at the basal membrane? Active transport and facilitated diffusion, all right? So both sodium ions, glucose, and amino acids would enter the cell via secondary active transport. That was the SYMPORT, when we saw sodium and glucose or sodium and amino acids moving into the cell together. So this would be at the apical surface, all right? And then at the basal surface, we had active transport moving sodium out. And facilitated diffusion. Specialized proteins involved in moving glucose and our amino acids out, okay? And then what was the other activity that I mentioned occurring at the proximal convoluted tubule? What's our opposite of reabsorption? Going in the other direction, from blood to filtrate. Reabsorption is moving material that's been filtered, secretion, all right? So reabsorption is going from filtrate in back to the blood, and secretion is going from blood, adding more to the filtrate that had already been filtered, all right? So we don't secrete material that hasn't already been filtered, we just do more of it. And so we're gonna look at that today when we do acid-base balance. We secrete hydrogen ions, and then the distal tubule we secrete bicarbonate ions as well. And so we have hydrogen ions, and then we had drug byproducts. And the image I showed you was also of ammonia, okay? Although we didn't dwell on how that occurred. All right, pardon? And then what happened at the nephron loop?
Concentration gradient.
Right, so I'm glad you didn't say concentration, because remember we ended up with a more dilute solution, but we formed the osmotic gradient, all right? So the nephron loop forms our osmotic gradient. All right, so that's what took us 4 hours to talk about. Well, we did a little bit of a lab and quiz on Thursday, all right? So we've looked at the Bowman's capsule, possible convoluted tubule, which will come back for acid-base balance, nephron loop, the distal straight tubule we talked about because of the role of the macula densa, and now we're gonna look at the distal convoluted tubule.
I'm sorry, under secretion, does it say drug
Drug byproducts. Yeah, sorry, it's a little crooked down there from the cramping. All right, so after erase it so the board isn't quite so busy looking. Yes.
What was underneath glucose for the facility?
Amino acids, AA is my shortcut for amino acids. All right, so what part of the body secretes, synthesizes, and secretes aldosterone? Pardon? The adrenal glands. Right. And what was the molecule that increased the release of aldosterone that we talked about on Thursday night? Pardon? No, it is just another comparable hormone, but this particular molecule increased the release of both ADH and aldosterone. We linked it to renin. So what was renin's role? Renin is released by the granular cells of the afferent arteriole under stimulus for several different reasons, but under stimulus by the macula densa when low sodium ions are contained in the filter, among other sympathetic nerve stimulation and low pressure in the afferent arteriole. So what did renin cause to happen? Remember the molecule that renin worked on as a substrate? Angiotensinogen, which was converted to angiotensin 1 by renin, and angiotensin 2 by the angiotensin converting enzyme from the lung. Okay? So angiotensin 2 is the molecule that increases the release of aldosterone. Okay? All right, so may I erase the words that are on the board and just read the diagram? Does everybody have that down? Okay. All right, so coming from the afferent arteriole, then we have the renin, which works in the blood on angiotensinogen, angiotensin 1, which goes to the lungs and causes angiotensin 2 to be formed. And then that causes the adrenal glands to synthesize and release aldosterone. Okay? So aldosterone has its receptors on the distal convoluted tubule. And to some extent on the collecting ducts if they are in the medulla, not the collecting ducts down in the cortex. All right? So these are receptors for aldosterone. Now, you'll notice I didn't have cellular, I just drew a line there for the cells of the distal convoluted tubule, right? I didn't draw not a whole cell. So, notice where the receptor for aldosterone actually is found. Is it on the surface of the cell? Is it a G protein coupled receptor? No. Aldosterone is synthesized from cholesterol. It's a steroid hormone. So it's soluble across the plasma membrane. This would be the base of the distal convoluted tubule, all right? And so coming from the peritubular capillaries, aldosterone is going to leave the blood of the peritubular capillaries, and it's going to pass through the membrane of the distal convoluted tubule cells because it's a lipid. It's derived from cholesterol, and it's going to bind to its receptor inside the cell of the distal convoluted tubule. And it's going to cause the nucleus to activate genes for the synthesis of sodium transport channels and sodium-potassium pumps. So we're going to increase the movement. It says urine up there, it should be filtrate. We're going to increase the movement of sodium out of the filtrate, through the sodium channels, out of the cells via sodium-potassium pumps, and back into the peritubular blood. So this happened in the proximal convoluted tubule without any hormone. All right? So 80% of the sodium is going to leave the proximal convoluted tubule based solely on concentration. The more sodium there is in the proximal convoluted tubule, the more sodium is going to leave. The less sodium there is, the less is going to leave. And that's purely driven by how much sodium is filtered. All right? Then, if the body needs to change blood pressure, if the body needs to change cardiac output, then the regulatory chemicals are released, and aldosterone causes an increase in the reabsorption of sodium at the distal convoluted tubule. All right? So we don't have a mechanism for changing the reabsorption of sodium at the proximal, except by whatever sodium is already there. Regulation, increasing the amount of sodium is going to occur at the distal convoluted tubule. All right? So we're going to increase the removal of sodium, and it's going to go into the peritubular blood. Now, what's going to follow sodium out of the filtrate? Because this is our filtrate here, it's not yet urine. Water. All right? What is the osmolality of our filtrate here as it comes up from the ascending nephron loop? Anybody remember from 100, all right? So this is the milliosmol of 100, whereas the surrounding blood is 300, okay? If we remove more sodium, water's going to follow. So that's not going to change the osmolality of our filtrate, except, well, not for sodium anyway. It will make it more concentrated because we still have urea and other waste matter in there. So now that this increased sodium in water is going into the blood, it'll eventually get into renal vein and get into our cortical radiant veins. All right. So as this sodium and water going back into the blood, it's going to increase the volume of the blood. Remember we talked about that with our cardiovascular system? It's going to increase venous return and increase end-diastolic volume and all of that. Is it going to increase the osmolality of the blood or decrease the osmolality of the blood? No, because sodium going out by itself would increase osmolality of the blood, right? If all we did was add sodium to the blood, its osmolality would be increased. But we're adding water as well. So we do increase the volume, but we don't increase the particle concentration. Alrighty? So that's how we increase systemic pressure. That then would increase venous return, increase end-diastolic volume, increase cardiac output. So now when blood comes back to our afferent arterial, capillary, systemic capillary pressure is going to be higher. So you have to factor in is a systemic increase in blood pressure, not a localized, not just a localized increase. All right? You don't have to worry about the amiloride, that's a type of diuretic, okay? And we're not focusing on diuretics here. But there's different diuretic functions to increase urine output, and they work on different regions of the nephron. Some work on the collecting duct, some work on the proximal convoluted tubule, some work on the nephron loop, they're called loop diuretics, all right? So when you read about those in a pharmacy class, you'll understand where they work, but we're not gonna focus on that right now. So aldosterone increases blood volume by increasing sodium reabsorption and water following passively with the sodium, okay? So that's going on here, okay? So a little bit of receptors for aldosterone, the collecting duct in the cortex, but now we're gonna look at what happens in the collecting duct of the medulla. And the hormone for that area, primarily, although there are some receptors in the cortex, the hormone on this area primarily down here with the medulla, is going to be antidiuretic hormone. Okay, what's the organ that makes antidiuretic hormone? It doesn't make it, it releases it. Hypothalamus makes it, so it's released from the posterior pituitary, definitely, but it's made by the hypothalamus. So, we have two types of cells in the collecting duct. We're gonna look at alpha and beta cells later tonight when we talk about hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ions. But the principal cells are the ones that are going to have receptors for aquaporin. Aldosterone up in the cortex, all right? I mentioned there's some there. But down in the medulla, we're looking primarily at the ADH. And so these are intercalated cells. And they're going to have metabotropic receptors for ADH. This means G-coupled protein receptors, all right? Meaning they use the second messenger, which you're already familiar with. Now, this slide isn't as helpful because it doesn't show the water channels. This, somewhere. It's not the slide I showed last night? Okay, well. Now we'll do comparison slide. Here's the G protein coupled receptor, all right? Alpha, beta, gamma subunit. Alpha subunit activates adenylate cyclase, which makes cyclic AMP, and that functions to insert water channels into the collecting duct. So, give me a moment here while I see if I can find slides for the water channels. Alright, so that previous slide just showed the water moving between the phospholipids. And water's polar, and our phospholipids are non-polar covalent, so it really works better with a polar channel. And so, second messenger cyclic AMP activates the fusion of water vesicles that have the aquaporin, which just means water pore or water channel. And that allows water to move into the cell and move out of the cell, all right? So if I were to ask you what region of the kidney does not have aquaporins, what would it be? What did we talk about Thursday night where there would be no water channels? Not the ascending limb. The descending. Okay. That's where we had the pump that could pump out sodium and urea to create a 200 milliosmol difference. And water couldn't follow, or else it would just maintain equilibrium. So we pumped out the particles, water stayed behind, so there aren't any water channels in the descending limb. There's definitely water channels in the ascending limb. That's where water is moved out to increase the concentration. So we have that increasing osmotic concentration of particles in the medullary fluid. So the closer we get to the papillary layer region of the medullary papillae, the more and more concentrated the fluid is.
Can we go back to the ascending, because you said ascending was impermeable to H2O.
The descending.
No, you said ascending.
Last time I said,
Yeah, say something, everything's
Everything's
impermeable.
fast.
Yeah, impermeable water, water can't leave it, and impermeable water.
Yeah.
Okay, the same here.
Everyone says it. Yeah, you said it was.
okay, so when it goes out, as it's leaving, it's pumping sodium out and getting more dilute. I flipped it when I drew it last night. So
Descending is.
it would be the,
impermeable.
yeah,
So.
it would be the
Can we go-
ascending limb.
So ascending has pumps, correct?
Yeah, let me bring that picture up so that you have the visualization of it here. Because I drew it in the opposite direction last night than I drew it for you guys.
Right.
Yeah, ascending limb.
Okay, okay, good.
So
Does not have the pump.
Yes,
It does not have the water channels.
Okay, yes, correct, yes.
Yeah, but just now I was wrong. has the pumps and it's not permeable water. Thank you for that correction.
It doesn't have water channels.
Okay, so, if I could just move to the next slide. So when we have the increasing, so here we're pumping the solute out in the ascending limb, increasing the osmotic concentration. And then if your body needs to increase either fluids or needs to increase cardiac output or both, then ADH is released from the posterior pituitary, but produced by the hypothalamus. And when those water channels open, then the increasingly particle-rich solution has an osmotic effect, drawing fluid out of the collecting ducts. So if our fluid concentration is 300 here, and in the collecting duct coming from the filtrate, it's 100, let's say we're not having to use our aldosterone, then when we open these water channels, then this is going to have only water leave, all right, not the salt, and this solution will become 300. So it may not necessarily get to 1200 if we don't need to have a maximum amount of water reabsorbed. So we can add a few, or we can add a lot of aquaporins, all right? So it will never get more concentrated than the filtrate is at 1200 to 1400. We only may need it to get concentrated to 700. So we just add a few of the aquaporins, all right? Now, I don't recall if I discussed it with you. I remember thinking I should, but I don't remember if I did. I think I did. How do we keep this fluid that's being removed through the aquaporins from ruining our osmotic gradient? Did I discuss that with you? Yeah, the vasorecta. Okay, good. So the vasorecta work around the nephron loop. They flow in a countercurrent flow to the nephron loop, and they also work with the collecting duct for draw in the same medullary pyramid, and they carry away that fluid that is being removed from the descending limb to increase the concentration, and they remove the fluid that's being removed from the collecting duct to maintain that osmotic concentration. Okay? All right. So, any questions specifically on that? When we add water via the ADH mechanism, our filtrate's going to become concentrated, right? It will come up to 1200 to 1400 milliosmoles concentrate. What's going to happen to the blood? It's going to increase in volume because we're adding the water to the blood of the peritubular and the vasorecta. So with ADH effect, as the blood increases in volume, is it going to demonstrate less viscosity or a higher viscosity? Is it going to be more dilute or less dilute? More dilute, because we're only adding water. We're not adding particles, all right? So aldosterone's effect is to increase volume but maintain the osmolarity of the blood, whereas ADH's effect is to increase volume and dilute the osmolarity, all right? Now, that's theoretically. In reality, they're both released at the same time. When if you have ADH working, you're going to have aldosterone working, okay? But just recognizing that aldosterone works with sodium primarily and water follows constantly, and ADH works with only water movement. Okay? All right. Before we talk about acid-base, I'm going to go back to a little bit of anatomy and nerve function. Okay? The nerve function should not be anything new. All right? Just as a reassurance. I don't think that's not a reassurance. I mean, that's scary. All right, so looking at the completing the anatomical pathway. We've talked about the ureter already. The ureter descends, this is still all retroperitoneal, okay, it's behind the parietal peritoneum. Descends along the psoas major and then down into the pelvis and comes to the posterior aspect of the bladder. And here we have the bladder, all right? Do you remember the name of the muscle of the bladder? We talked about way back with reproductive. We had our 3 Ds, or not 3Ds, but we had our 3 names, 2 for smooth muscle and 1 for skeletal. So we had the cremaster, which was skeletal. We had the we had the dartos, which was the smooth muscle of the scrotum. And I don't know if I mentioned, but the detrusor is the name of the smooth muscle of the bladder, all right? So it's not very common. We have the trachealis smooth muscle for the trachea, but it's not very common that we actually name smooth muscle. So may I erase the board here? You guys have that down? Not that I need to diagram the bladder for you, but I want to diagram a little bit of the neural pathway. You have it, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure you were still taking a picture or just having it up there for the next thing I put up. All right, so we have the smooth muscle of the bladder known as the detrusor. We also have smooth muscle forming the sphincter. And we'll see the same pattern when we look at the anal sphincter with our last unit. So this is known as the internal. Urethral sphincter, which was part of the deep transverse perineal muscle, okay? And then we have the urethra. So if you're male, the external urethral sphincter, actually, the external urethral sphincter is the deep transverse perineal muscle. That's farther down here because we have the prostate in between. But if we're female, we have the external urethral sphincter right here. And this is the same as the deep transverse perineal muscle. This is voluntary or skeletal muscle. It's also known as the urogenital diaphragm or the deep transverse perineal muscle. So before we move on to the neural component, the 2 ureters come in from the back. They don't have a structural valve, but they come in at an angle. So as the bladder fills up with urine, it helps to shut off the opening of the ureters, all right? So they come in at an angle, forming an opening here. And then we have a area of smoothness, so the bladder wall is thrown into folds. Remember the rugae of the vagina? The folds of the vagina, we're gonna see rugae in the stomach next. All right, but these are the rugae, which help, they're just folds, so as the bladder enlarges, it has room to increase in size, all right? And there's no fold in this area right here. It's just, it's known as the trigone, where we have, actually, let me bring the ureters there, because that's what creates that third point. So the ureters open it there, and then the third opening is for the urethra, okay? So the ureters are coming in here. So that smooth area of no rugae is the trigone. So we have both smooth muscle and skeletal muscle involved in what is described as the micturition reflex. So that is at the very last little bit here. I'm skipping a bunch. I don't know if I posted the slides for fluid and electrolyte balance, but we're not looking at that specifically. So I'm going to the very last part of those slides. Let's say when, fluid and electrolyte balance, if those are posted. So this is, we're not gonna worry about the pontoon storage area, all right? I'm gonna focus primarily on what's happening here. And so when the urine is filling up the bladder, are we gonna be more on the sympathetic aspect of the nervous system or the parasympathetic? When the bladder is relaxed and filling up with urine. So we're not going to the bathroom. Is that sympathetic or parasympathetic to not go to the bathroom? Sympathetic, all right? So, bladder is relaxed. Where's that a little bit higher? I moved the right hand, right? So when the bladder is filling, we're under sympathetic influence, which means that the detrusor muscle is relaxed. And both of our sphincters are contracted, all right? So the smooth muscle sphincter, the internal urethral sphincter, is contracted to keep urine from leaking out. And our voluntary muscle, the external urethral sphincter, is contracted. Alright, so sympathetic neurons coming from the sympathetic lumbar region of the spinal cord release norepinephrine, which inhibits the smooth muscle from contracting, right? And activates contraction of the internal urethral sphincter. So it's not that nothing is going on. We are releasing neurotransmitters that keep the detrusor relaxed, all right? So we have our norepinephrine being released. This will be sympathetic. Alright? That's keeping the detrusor muscle relaxed. So I'm gonna put a negative sign here. And then we have sympathetic. With a positive sign, keeping the internal urethral sphincter contracted. Okay? So urine is allowed to fill up in the bladder and not be excreted. Okay? Then, what's the nerve that innervates our external urethral sphincter? What neuron would this be traveling in? Be found in the anterior gray horn of the sacrospinal cord. Voluntary motor neuron, same nerve that goes to the ischial-cavernosus muscle and the bulbospongiosus muscle. What? Yes, Judendo. Okay, so this is going to be active. Keeping the external urethral sphincter closed. Actually, I should write that over here. Okay? Now, as the bladder fills up with urine, what's going to happen to its diameter? It's going to stretch, okay? So we're going to stretch the bladder wall. So now we have the bladder full. it then, we start out with sensory neurons, which are going to carry that stretching component, afferent neurons. So, afferent neurons for stretch go to the spinal cord. That's the next slide. So here are the afferent neurons still going through the pudendal nerve, just like they did with the dorsal nerve of the penis, okay? They go to the spinal cord, and they form a reflex with the parasympathetic. So they're gonna inhibit sympathetic and activate parasympathetic. So as a result of the afferent stretch receptors, we have the detrusor muscle is contracted. Through the parasympathetic getting there by the pelvic lengthening. Alright, so that's going to, see what color I have left here. Red is our voluntary motor. Purple. I'll do a dotted line, I'll do red with a dotted line. All right, so coming from our sacrospinal actually within the bladder wall itself. So this is our parasympathetic. It's going to release acetylcholine, and our detrusor muscle is going to contract. Okay? Then we have parasympathetic coming to the sphincter, and it's going to relax. The internal urethral sphincter is going to relax. Okay, because of the parasympathetic. But we're not done yet. If you were 2 months old, or 10 months old, I met my son for lunch today. His daughter turned 11 months today. And he has a week off from the school where he teaches, so I met him at those Coyotes. And took Brooklyn out of her car seat, and her diaper was sopping wet. Well, I mean, it just felt wet. So I said, while you go get a table, I'll take her to the bathroom and change her. And he goes, I just changed her. I said, that may be, but the diaper's wet now. He goes, I didn't even bring a diaper bag. So the baby doesn't have a diaper, doesn't have socks, doesn't have a blanket, didn't have a jacket on. So fortunately, she wasn't too fussy about it, and I changed her when we got home. This is all she needed, all right? Was the autonomic response of a full bladder causing the parasympathetic neurons to release acetylcholine, the detrusor muscle contracts, and the internal urethral sphincter relaxes. Fortunately or unfortunately, that doesn't work for us once we're past the age of 2 or 3 or whatever age you were potty trained. So the house where I stay, my friend's daughter, who's been there for about 3 years, well, at least her daughter is 3 years old. The daughter's daddy comes over, their relationship is up and down. Sometimes they're lovey-dovey, and sometimes he's the baby's daddy, and that's as much as he gets to do. So my bedroom's on the first floor, the other bedrooms are upstairs. The family room is right 4 feet from my bedroom door, and the bathroom is right outside my bedroom door, and it's the guest bathroom as well as my bathroom. It has a shower. And I found that when they're there in the living room, I can hear everything they say. I can hear someone tinkling in the bathroom when I'm in the kitchen. So I get home, I have literally stayed up until 2 o'clock in the morning waiting to go to the bathroom for him to leave, because it's not gonna work while he's sitting there in the living room. It's just, my external urethral sphincter is not gonna relax. So I says, okay, whatever, when he leaves, sometimes I'll go take a shower and hope maybe that will take care of the noise and everything else. But it's like, okay, it's now 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd like to go to sleep, please leave. But that requires inhibition from the brain, okay? And so that bit of training releasing, inhibiting the external urethral sphincter. That's a voluntary motor neuron. Okay, that has to be inhibited. So, well, I know this is getting a little complicated over here, it might be clearer once you look at that, but at least you can understand that a little bit better. So, this must be blocked. Okay? So the internal urethral sphincter has to be, external urethral sphincter has to relax in order for you to go to the bathroom.
You just block the it.
Well, inhibited, that's what the negative here is showing, is it's inhibited and not activated. Okay? So let's see now.
Yes.
You can now relate everything that eating your Thanksgiving dinner and defecating to something we've talked about in class. All right, so a rapid heart rate on excitement, going to the bathroom, sexual activity, breathing. All we need to get you through now is eating your Thanksgiving dinner and you'll be set for the semester. But you'll have to digest that and then come back after Thanksgiving and we'll talk about what happened. Okay, because I'm not gonna get that done tonight. But don't let it keep you from enjoying it. We'll just have to remember all the things that go on and then we'll relate to that when we get back after Thanksgiving. Right? There you go. Yes. And all the glucose and fats and everything else. So we're done with the, everything but the pH balance. And I haven't talked about the erythropoietin. But I have an idea of what cells make the erythropoietin, the EPO for increased hemoglobin. It's not really known for sure, but it's thought to be fibroblasts in the area around the peritubular capillary. That's about as much as I can narrow it down. Okay? How they get exposed to the oxygen and how they got, other than the fact that a lot of blood flows through the kidney a lot of times during the day, probably one of the, other than the lungs, you would think there would be cells in the lungs making EPO more so than the kidneys, because all the blood has to go through the lungs too. All right, so what I want to do now is look at acid base, and that will be the end, but I think, that's what we have to cover. Why don't we take an early break, and get the histo quiz over with, okay? And then we can focus on acid base.